As always, if you have questions, please let me know. I'm happy to help. Anything you need, let me know. I'm here for you. Other than that, work hard, study hard, get to our questions. 31. Several weeks have passed since Tony started her new caseload. Her RBTs collected data with high fidelity, and the data is now ready to be graphed. After Tony graphs the data, what will be the best method to evaluate the graphs? What is this question asking? The question is essentially asking, how do we read our graphs? What method do we use to analyze the data after it's graphed? We typically are going to be using line graphs. Line graphs are great because not only are they quick and easy to look at, we can also share them with parents and other stakeholders, and they can look at them as well. So if we're going to be analyzing these graphs, how are we going to do it? Are we going to be using statistical analysis? No, right? Statistical analysis is not necessary to analyze the graphs we use, okay? That's a complex method of analyzation that you might use if you're doing specific research, but day-to-day BCBA work, you're not going to need it. B, as a team with our RBTs. Well, as a BCBA, you're going to be responsible for your data. You're not necessarily going to be evaluating graphs with your RBTs. Now, if you want a second pair of eyes, RBTs are very useful, but it's not necessarily going to be the best method and the most common method you're using. C, visual analysis. Yes, all visual analysis means is we look at our graph, we look at the trends, we look at the variabilities, we look at the level changes, and we make conclusions. A quick visual analysis of a line graph can tell us a lot about our client and their data. So visual analysis is the best and most common method we use to evaluate graphs in ABA. And then D, using computer software. If you're lucky enough to have a computerized method of collecting data, then a lot of times that software will do it for you. But if not, don't worry. Visual analysis is always going to be the quickest, easiest, and best method to use to evaluate our graphs in ABA. 32. Jonah works for a giant corporation that manages finances for multi-million-dollar companies. Cybersecurity is a priority for Jonah's company, so they hire a team of cybersecurity professionals to ramp up security. Now, to enter the building, Jonah must swipe his key card and then enter a 5-digit PIN code or the door won't open. What type of schedule is Jonah on? So we know immediately this is a compound schedule, right? Because we have two basic reinforcement schedules at play here. So we're looking at some sort of compound schedule. Our answers are multiple, concurrent, tandem, and chained. You should be able to immediately eliminate concurrent because concurrent has to do with choice. It's matching law. We've got two reinforcement schedules simultaneously occurring, separate behaviors. The learner can choose what schedule to respond to. Jonah has to complete both schedules. He has to swipe his card, and then he has to enter a 5-digit PIN in order to receive reinforcement, which is the door opening. So what about multiple? Well, multiple is when we have two or more schedules alternating, usually at random, okay, with an appropriate stimulus signaling what schedule's in play. Again, these aren't random schedules. These are very clear-cut schedules. So we have tandem and chained, okay? Both require completing basic reinforcement schedules in order to receive reinforcement. Now, what's the difference? Tandem, there is no SD signaling the new schedule. Chained, there is. So ask yourself, if you didn't know how Jonah has to complete this chain, could you do it? Well, no, right? Once he swipes his card, there's no signal to now enter the PIN. Jonah just knows, right? There's no signal available saying one reinforcement schedule is over, the next one starts, or which one's available, okay? Jonah's got to complete both basic reinforcement schedules in order, right? He has to swipe his key card and then enter the code, but there's no SD telling him what one is available and which one comes first. So what type of schedule is Jonah on? It's going to be C, tandem. Compound schedule reinforcement questions, they're really going to ask you and test you on, do you know what schedule involves a signaling SD and what schedule doesn't? That's really the most common difference, okay, between our 6 compound schedules is the SD or not. Now, concurrent kind of exists on its own, okay, but the other 6, you need to know, does an SD signal it or does it not? 33, if you're designing treatment plans that utilize intensive prompting methods, why is it so important that you design a plan to fade the prompts? So this is pretty basic stuff, right? You should know the reason we fade prompts, but we still sometimes fail to do it. It's one of the most important things we can do for our clients. The worst thing that can happen is we get a young client We use prompts and we forget to fade them. As they get older, they become more and more what? More and more reliant on those prompts. So again, why is it so important that our plan includes a method of fading prompts? A, fading the prompts helps to prevent prompt dependence. Well, yes, that's what we just predicted. That's what we just said. We attacked the question, and A immediately gives us our prediction. Now, do we just answer A, panic, and move on? No. You have so much time on the exam. Slow down, read all of your answer choices, pick the best answer. So A looks good. Is there a better answer? B, fading the prompt is only necessary if I use most to least prompting. Not true, right? Even if we use least to most, okay, or graduated guidance, we're still prompting. We still need to fade those prompts. So B is incorrect. C, the prompt becomes the temporary SD in your contingencies. Yes, that's what a prompt is. A three-term contingency is what? An SD, a response, and a consequence. When you add a prompt, it becomes an SD, prompt, response, consequence. That prompt temporarily takes place of the SD. We want that behavior to come under control of our SD, not the prompt. So we need to fade the temporary SD, which in this case is the prompt. So C is also a reason. So if we look at D, it says both A and C. Are A and C both reasons we should design a plan to fade the prompts? Absolutely. We want to prevent prompt dependence, and we want the behavior to come under the control of the SD and not the prompt. So why do we fade prompts, or why do we plan to fade prompts? Our answer is going to be D, both A and C. 34. Which of the following answer choices best demonstrates what we consider imitation and applied behavior analysis? This is one of those terms that you think you know as an RBT, and then we get to our BCBA prep, and it kind of throws people off, right? When we think about imitation, we typically think about people saying, copy me, and then the person copying, right? We're talking about true imitation here. They want to know, do you know what true imitation is in applied behavior analysis? Okay. And true imitation is not signaled, okay, by that verbal SD. It's signaled by that nonverbal action of whatever person we're imitating, right? We just want our client to be able to look around, look at somebody else, and copy them. That is true imitation. So that's what we're looking for in our answer. Okay. A, Tom is watching his dad chop wood. His dad chops a piece of wood, hands Tom the axe, and says, now your turn. Tom then chops wood. Did Tom imitate? No, right? His dad doing all of these antecedents to Tom chopping the wood, handing him the axe, saying, now your turn. This is not true imitation. Okay. Tom chopping wood, yes, he's doing what his dad did, but true imitation would be Tom standing side by side with his dad. His dad chops a piece of wood. Tom then immediately chops his own piece of wood. Okay. We're looking for that immediacy, and we're looking for that nonverbal, okay, SD. B, Georgia is playing red light, green light with her friends. Georgia stops when the sign changes to red. Is she imitating her friends, or did she just respond to the SD? Well, she responded to the SD. The sign changed to red, signaling stop. Georgia stops. Not imitation. C, Braden is taking a math test. He leans over the peak at what his friend is writing for the answer on question 5, and then writes down the same thing. Okay, so what did Braden do? Right? He's sitting next to his friend. His friend is writing the answer. Braden looks at his friend, writes the same answer. This is a good example of imitation. So far, C is our best answer. Is D better? Let's find out. Josh is playing Go Fish. He asks his friend if he has any jacks. His friend tells him, go fish. Jonah pulls a card. Not imitation, right? This is just an intraverbal exchange. Josh says, do you have jacks? His friend says, nope, go fish. Jonah responds by pulling a card. Okay. Not imitation. The best example of imitation here is C. Okay. Braden leaning over and copying exactly what his friend is doing immediately. Make sure you understand this concept of modeling and imitation. Okay. They're going to quiz you on it on the exam, and they want to test specifically that you know what is true imitation and when does it occur. 35. Tina's family receives services from the ABA company you work for as a BCBA. You've delivered services for almost 6 months now and are finally starting to see progress. Excited, you tell Tina's parents. They respond by telling you that they wish to terminate services immediately. How should you respond? All right, a little disappointing, but clients can be fickle. People have a lot of things going on in their life. You just don't know. Okay. So a part of being a BCBA is responding appropriately in these sometimes difficult situations. Now, we have our rules when we want to terminate a client, right? We never abandon clients, okay? We try to give time frames. But what if a client wants to terminate our services? What do we do? How do we respond? A, inform them that they are required to give a 30-day notice before terminating services. Nope, not true, right? If the client wants to stop services, they have that right to terminate immediately, okay? B, inform them that you are not allowed to abandon clients and will continue providing services. Again, no, if they want to terminate, we need to terminate. Now, you can tell them, or you can do an exit interview, find out what's the problem, and help them find other services if necessary. Okay. But we're not just going to go against their wishes. They have the right to refuse treatment at any time. C, attempt to convince them to stay any way you can. Now, you're probably going to figure out why they're leaving. Okay. But begging and groveling and guilting them into staying is not the appropriate response. Again, ethically, they have the right to terminate whenever. So D, accept their termination without incident, with a smile on your face, with an understanding demeanor. Yes, that's how you should respond. They say they want to terminate services immediately. Regardless of your progress, you have to accept that termination without incident. 36, there is a table and 2 chairs set up in a treatment room where your client works. At the table, you place a field of 3 pictures on the table: a duck, a bear, and a fish. You hand your client a picture of a duck and say, put it where it goes. The client places it on the other duck. What does this demonstrate? All right, so we have reflexivity, symmetry, and transitivity, and of course, expressive identification. Well, you can immediately eliminate expressive identification, right? Because our client is not matching ducks expressively, okay, it's going to be receptively. So now we ask ourselves, is this reflexivity? Is this symmetry? Or is this transitivity? Reflexivity is what? It's A equals A, right? Stimulus equals stimulus. Symmetry is what? A equals B. So picture equals word, word equals picture. Transitivity is A equals B, B equals C, therefore C equals A, right? Picture equals word equals animal, animal equals picture. Which one are we doing here? Well, we have pictures on the table. We hand them the picture of the duck. They match picture to picture. This is simply reflexivity. These 3 give people a lot of trouble, okay? My advice, because once you learn them, they're pretty straightforward because you can really map them out on your exam if you need to, okay? But if you're struggling grasping these concepts, okay, I would work on them last, right? Because you probably won't see that many questions on your exam regarding these, okay? And if you do, just remember reflexivity, A equals A, symmetry, A equals B, transitivity, A equals B equals C, therefore C equals A. 37, Steph Curry is the greatest shooter of a basketball in NBA history. He is best known for the number of three-point shots he is able to make. One time, Steph Curry made 70 three-point shots in a row. His shooting demonstrates what? So we're trying to measure Steph Curry's made threes, okay? So what are you thinking here? Start thinking, right? When we're thinking measurement, are we measuring an amount, a number of responses? Are we counting? Or are we measuring time? Well, if we're measuring 70 three-point shots in a row, what are you doing? You're counting how many he's made in a row. We're not timing him. We're not timing how many he's made or how long it takes in between shots. We're just counting. So what are we demonstrating here? Temporal extent. What is temporal extent? Temporal extent is essentially duration. All right. So D is also duration. So we can eliminate A and D. We're not measuring how long it took him. We're just counting how many he made. B, temporal locus. Okay, a location in time. Temporal locus is associated with latency in IRT. Are we measuring the time in between three-point shots? Again, no. Are we measuring the time from the SD to the first shot? No, right? So we can eliminate temporal locus. Repeatability. Can we demonstrate repeatability here? Well, of course, right? His behavior is very repeatable. I mean, extremely repeatable, right? He made 70 in a row, okay? Repeatability is what Steph Curry is demonstrating. Duration, obviously, again, is not our answer. We're not timing how long it takes. Okay. We're just looking for the count and the repeatability of Steph Curry's shot. So his shooting demonstrates C, repeatability. 38. Several members of a group home attend a social skills outing every Saturday. One member of the group engages in severe attention-seeking behavior. He would loudly bang objects together until someone tells him to stop. What part of behavior is being described in this scenario? All right, I'll admit, this one's a little tricky, okay? I'm trying to reinforce the idea to you. You need to pick the best answer, okay? So clearly we have the function, right? Severe attention-seeking behavior. But that's not one of our answer choices. So we need to go to the next step, okay? So when we say something is loudly occurring, right, or softly occurring, what are we describing, okay? Are we describing topography? Sure, right? I mean, this is basic topography, banging objects together. It's not very descriptive, okay? What kind of objects? How does it happen? You know, if I was observing this kid, okay, it might be difficult to just observe this behavior without a further description of what it looks like. However, this word here, right, this adjective loudly, okay, that is specifically describing what? That is specifically describing magnitude. So magnitude is going to be the better answer here than topography, right? There's no all of the above. There's no both A and B. So we need the best answer. Magnitude is going to be better here because we are specifically describing, okay, loudness. We're also describing function, but function is not an answer choice, okay? These are kind of the questions they're going to ask, right? They're going to be tricky. You might think two answers look good. We've got to pick the best one, okay? Obviously, not frequency. We're not taking data. And then measurability, okay? Again, we're not picking a measurement system here. We would probably need more information to really, truly measure this behavior, okay? What we do have, though, clear as day, is the magnitude, loudly. So we know when these objects are banging together, it's going to make a lot of noise. So what part of behavior is being described? B, magnitude. 39, you are hired to consult for a high school self-contained classroom. The special education teacher, the speech therapist, and the principal all attend your first meeting. The special education teacher informs you that everything is going well in her classroom and that there are no necessary changes needed at this time. Since this is your first time meeting the team, how should you respond? What does our task list say? What do our ethics say? We've got to collaborate. We've got to work as a team. All right. We aren't the leader. We work as a team. Okay. So we need to respect these other members of the team. So you're in your first meeting. What do you do? How do you respond? The special education teacher says everything is going great. So what do you say? A, acknowledge the special education teacher and inform them that you will simply be conducting observations at first. It's a very pragmatic way of going about it, right? Hey, I hear you. That's great. It's awesome if everything is going well. I'm just going to do some observations just for my own data, right? Just for my own knowledge and see if I see anything else. Okay. It's a very, very collaborative way of approaching the situation. A looks good. Is there a better answer? B, acknowledge the special education teacher, but explain that you are prepared with several evidence-based interventions that you would like to implement immediately. Okay. This is your first meeting. We don't even know if you've seen this kid yet. Should you go in there guns blazing saying, okay, time to start all these evidence-based interventions? No, right? You need to first observe at the bare minimum, okay? C, establish a hierarchy of who is in charge of the team. Now, I see a lot of BCBAs who want to do this, right? We feel like we know our clients the best. It's just natural. But we can't go in there acting as the alpha and trying to establish our control over the other individuals, okay? They have a right to this client as well. And then D, begin implementing interventions without informing the special education teacher since you were hired as the consultant. That may be true, right? Collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. Burn it in your brain, right? So what are we going to do? We're going to do A, acknowledge the special education teacher and inform them that you will simply be conducting observations at first. And then finally, 40, what is essential when selecting replacement behaviors for a differential reinforcement of incompatible behavior intervention plan? Replacement behaviors are key, right? Whenever we're removing a behavior, we need to replace it with something else. If we're running a DRI, then we really need a replacement behavior because if we don't have a replacement behavior, it's not going to be an actual DRI. So when we're selecting these replacement behaviors, what do we need to be sure of? A, the replacement behavior is in the client's repertoire. Yes, anytime you're teaching a replacement behavior, make sure it's already in the repertoire, okay? Because you're going to want to be reinforcing it whenever it happens, okay, in the place of that other behavior. If they don't know the behavior yet, your chances to reinforce might be very low. B, the replacement behavior is functionally equivalent. Yes, differential reinforcement of incompatible behavior. We're taking away one behavior that served a function. We need to give them something else to serve that same function. C, the replacement behavior cannot occur simultaneously. Now, this is specific to the incompatible plan. These two behaviors can't occur at the same time. Standing up, sitting down, talking quietly, talking loudly, walking, running. If you're going to do an incompatible plan, they cannot occur simultaneously. If you want a behavior that can occur at the same time, then do an alternative plan, right? But if you're going to be choosing an incompatible plan, when selecting replacement behaviors, they need to be in the repertoire, they need to be functionally equivalent, and they cannot occur simultaneously. All right.